Hey all, here at OS Reviews. You're watching our revisited review of the Sony Vaio SVT13. As the name suggests, this is a 13-inch ultra portable. In fact, it's one of the earlier models that ran on Windows 7, but it's since been upgraded to Windows 10 since Microsoft released free updates to the OS. In an unfortunate turn of events, Sony is really no longer making laptops branded under Vaio anymore. In fact, this became a spin-off. The name was licensed to another Japanese company, and they just make Vaio laptops, but they're not from Sony. So there's a distinction there. But before, they always stood for kind of business class, almost luxurious in terms of its design, lifestyle products, which are Apple-esque, but of course uses Windows since it's not from Apple. In terms of the design, it still is very sleek today, and it's also impossibly light for a computer that is well over 4 or 5 years old at this point. We just have a brushed aluminum finish on the front, but that's really the only part that's constructed out of metal. The sides of this laptop are still made out of plastic, along with the palm rest inside. So it's a little bit on the flimsy side. It's not truly unibody like MacBooks. However, the front and the kind of chamfered edge, which reminds me of a knife, are the parts that are reinforced with metal. Now, again, on the side, very slim. We do have full-size ports, including an Ethernet, VGA, HDMI, 3.5 millimeters. There's also a SD card slot. The front features some status LEDs for Wi-Fi. Other side features a USB 3.0 port, a USB 2.0 port, some fans, and the proprietary charging port, and that's pretty much it. On the back, you can see the battery here can be removed, but it's fairly flush with the unit. Again, it's surprisingly lightweight because it's made out of plastic on the back. So compared to, again, a MacBook, I would say it even weighs a little bit less than that. But definitely a very sleek and stylish overall design. Now, the chrome accented hinge, which again reminds me of a knife, is also the specialty point of this model. Whenever you open up the laptop, it folds downwards to pop up the keyboard at an elevated angle for typing, a little bit reminiscent of, say, a Dell Adamo XPS, the first generation model, also similar in a way to, say, a Surface laptop. So it's a pretty clever implementation and makes the overall display and keyboard again lift up by pushing the hinge downwards, which is why it has a really peculiar looking shape, and it's emphasized by that chrome accent. The hinge is also very well balanced, so you can open up the laptop using just one hand or one finger, similar to a MacBook, so very well crafted there. Overall, again, this was a flagship level computer from Sony. It was more meant as a fashionable laptop, not meant really to be a super powerhouse, but still cost well over $1,000 or $2 when it was new, depending on the configuration. The model that we have here comes with 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM, along with an Intel Core i5 U Series processor. So it's actually not bad. It's not going to be a gaming machine because it's still a very lightweight computer at the end of the day. But with the U Series, it is one of the better i series chips, and it's not fanless either. So it definitely will kick in after you have a few applications running in the background. So it generates a little bit of heat. It's not the most energy efficient thing in the world, but the battery life is decent. It will get you through, I would say, around 4 hours of use today before it needs to be recharged. For comparison, here it is next to a Jumper EasyBook. This is the same size. It's basically a clone of a MacBook that has a 13-inch, so you can tell that compared to the latest generation of Ultrabooks, it's no longer the smallest or slimmest necessarily. There is a slightly larger bezels, but overall, very much respectable for something of its age that originally came with Windows 7, so Sony really were ahead with its design. Here it is along with a Chromebook, which are basically the Ultrabooks of today. They're a lot cheaper as well, but definitely not as powerful, especially for offline tasks. So here it is opening up with one finger. Really a beautiful, elegant design. And other Vaio laptops I really like would be the Lifestyle Series PC. It's kind of this UMPC or ultra mobile laptop that Sony produced actually a few years prior to this model. It's a weaker device that uses an Intel Atom chipset but has a 7-inch display. It's a computer that you can tuck away into a larger pocket. So again, Vaio laptops in general do have very classy and interesting, innovative, forward-thinking designs for their time. So you can see that inside we have an island or chiclet style layout, and on top we do have some special functionality keys, including access the web, the power key, which is Chrome accented, and accessing some VAIO suite for software. The top here is where we have that glossy 13.3-inch display, which unfortunately is only 720p on this particular model, and it isn't IPS, so that is a change. Now today's flagship laptops will definitely have IPS panels, which means that viewing angles are a little bit of a struggle, as we'll see later on. But you can tell that the power key again is accented to be green, and it turns red when it's in sleeping mode, and it's transparent on the side as well, which just makes it look very cool. Again, the palm rest section inside is all made out of plastic, but it doesn't creak or really flex too much, so it remains fairly stable. Bezel size, decent for a laptop of its age, and we have the webcam, which is 720p, along with the microphone on the very top. Again, now it's running on Windows 10. Now, the one reason why you may want to consider this laptop today would obviously be price. It still has a pretty forward-thinking design, but now you can find one for around $250 if you shop around online, which is a decent price, I'd say, for its configuration, the Core i5 and 8 gigs of RAM. With that being said, it still isn't really a budget laptop even now, because I'd argue that Sony's products and the VAIO products have always retained value better than many other manufacturers, like Dell, for example. So for products of the same age, you may compare it with other models from different manufacturers. Those may sell for even less. So this will still have a bit of an extra premium because people are paying more for kind of that Sony design and quality that it used to stand for. So again, the flickering that you see right now is just because of the kind of frame rate of the camera. It's not something you can actually detect in person, but as we are tilting the monitor back and forth, hopefully you can see how the colors do change pretty dramatically when you're off axes. It's kind of hard to read. It blacks out if you have it tilted away from your eyes too much. So display quality isn't the greatest on this, but the performance is still very smooth and responsive. As you can see here, scrolling along feels just fine. The trackpad is made out of plastic, unfortunately, but it's fairly spacious and supports pinch-to-zoom multi-touch and feels quite responsive. Same thing goes with the keys. They could have a bit more of a deeper, I think, depth of travel, but they're pretty clicky, and it's a standard layout. It's full size, so you can use it after a few moments and really get used to it and get a fast typing rate. The keyboard, however, is not backlit, which is, again, another feature that I would have kind of expected from a flagship level laptop. However, it is what it is, and overall, as long as you have some ambient light, it works just fine. Here are the system properties on board. Again, we have the variant with 8 gigs of RAM, now updated to Windows 10 Pro Edition. Otherwise, the performance, again, in terms of just office, web browsing, and even some light gaming still works just fine. When you are doing some very light tasks, like file management, for example, the fan really doesn't kick in at all, and in that case, the battery can last by an hour or two longer. But if you have a handful of tabs open, maybe more than 5 or 6, that's when you can hear the fan start to punch in a little bit in the background, and it does get a little bit warm if you put it on your lap, even though it's really lightweight and very slim looking. A very elegant portfolio, but again, definitely not a silent laptop, so do keep that in mind. It's using an older generation Core i series chipset. But you can see here again, scrolling along, even on complex pages, jumping back and forth, everything is still just really fast and fluid. And simpler tasks like word processing if you are a student or using it to type out documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint all load up really quickly. You won't be disappointed at all. I would say the i5 here is still, reasonably powerful. It used to be a flagship level chipset, so on here, again, it still is pretty good after all these years. Better than a budget laptop today for the same price if it was using just a Celeron, for example. So again, in terms of the battery performance, it is one of the weaker elements. We think of an Ultrabook as having amazing battery life, but that's not really true here, especially if you're getting a used model that has degraded somewhat. And again, the screen brightness isn't the brightest either, but even at moderate settings, it will last you for about, I would say, 4 hours if you get a unit in decent condition or refurbished condition. So just keep that in mind, but it charges up reasonably quick, and again, it's very lightweight and easy to tote around. Still looks like a very interesting and fairly new design today. That's been the Sony Vaio SVT 13-inch Ultrabook Revisited, a pretty classic device of its age, and you can find out more details if interested in the links down below. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.